us closer together so we can be framed in the shot. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this first in our series this year for One World, Many Beliefs. Last year we did actually 15 monthly sessions, once a month on a Monday during lunch hour, where we presented different faith traditions and worldviews. This time we're doing things a little bit differently. First of all, we're doing it on an evening. We're only doing it quarterly. And we're doing what we're calling trilogues. So we're going to have 3 faith traditions or worldviews that are going to be represented. And I'll let my colleagues here introduce themselves in a moment. We have a topic, and then each of us sort of gives our perspective from our faith tradition or worldview. Go on in. Please sign in. Thank you. Right there on the table, sorry. Then we'll kind of open up a conversation, and we want you to join in that conversation as well. So if you have questions, if you have thoughts, if you have a perspective, if something just sort of strikes you or inspires you, we want this to be as much of a conversation as possible. I will introduce myself first. I am Rabbi David Kay. I chair the board of directors of the Interfaith Council of Central Florida. I served a congregation here in the Orlando area as a rabbi for 17 years, retired from pulpit work just over 4 years ago, and am just about as busy as I ever was, doing stuff in the community and working with, as a volunteer, teaching at Rollins College and being a volunteer at the Woodruff Park Library.
I'm Sheri Dressler. I'm a member of the Bahai faith. I'm also on the board of the Interfaith Council. And Bahai faith does not have clergy. But what I did do was teach at the University of Central Florida for a very long time. And I'm also a psychotherapist, so I was training psychotherapists and additionally running a Center for Experiential Learning, which helped about 22,000 students a year get experience related to what they were studying. So it was a wonderful experience. And being on the Interfaith Council has also been a wonderful experience to learn about the diversity of this community.
Thank you, Dr. Sheri. Thank you, Rabbi David. Hello, everyone. I'll use a Hindu way of greeting, so I'm going to hold my hand and say Namaste. Namaste, everyone.
Namaste.
My name is Virender Chauhan, and I represent the Hindu philosophy. I work as a software product manager, and I also have my own asset management work that I do. I live in Oviedo with my wife and my 2 children, and we also have 2 pets. And I'm a volunteer with the Hindu Society of Central Florida, located in Castleberry. There's a temple there as well, beautiful temple, and everyone's welcome if you would like to visit. But aside from that, I also volunteer with the Hindu University of America and a few other bodies. I also like to volunteer with the State Park, National Park, and anybody else who may want any of my services, I go and volunteer there. I've been connected with the Interfaith initiative for more than 10 years, in various, being in a panel or being, in a discussion, and not really in the board like the 2 people here. They're much, I think much more versed with the activities and much more contributing to Interfaith. But yes, I've done my bit as well, and I will. Do we go through, talk about the perspective of afterlife now or later? This is just introduction.
Well, this is just introductions,
Okay,
but as
gotcha.
long as you have the floor, yeah, share with us, please.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Okay. So I said Namaste earlier, so I'll just quickly give you a half a minute introduction on what Namaste is. Namaste is a word in the Sanskrit language. Sanskrit is the ancient language of India and of Hinduism and many other traditions that come out of India. Namaste literally means Namahate, which is I salute or acknowledge the divinity in you. So let's say I'm saying to this lady here, I acknowledge the divinity in you. And when we communicate, the other person also says Namaste. So they acknowledge the divinity in me. So we are basically trying to acknowledge that there is something divine in the other person. And that also is an effort to remove the differences we have, because we all have many differences, right? We don't have any differences, right? No, we do, right? We have differences of age, gender, color, caste, creed, this, race, all kinds of, there are many that are biological and there are so many that are man-made, right? So the reason I say this is because when we say something is divine between the other person, that divine center in each person, we refer to it as the Atman. Atman. So Atman is a Sanskrit word. The closest approximation is what we say soul. So in the Western philosophy and English language we say soul. So it's basically that. Now that is we say is a part of the divine. So that has the same essence of the divine. And when we talk about afterlife, what I want to also emphasize on it is the person. We say the person is not really, this is not me, the whole physical form. But within the physical form, that individual soul or the Atman is the real me. And that real me, this is not the only journey. There's multiple journeys I take. And this is one of those instances. So there have been many past lifetimes I have taken, and newer lifetimes that will come. This is not said and done for me. This is one of the opportunities to do something. To do what? To do whatever good I can do, whatever other things I can do, right? So basically through all this time that I live my life, I will perform various actions, right? Are you all familiar with the term karma? I think pretty much everyone at least has heard the term karma. Karma literally is the deeds I do, or basically the outcome of the deeds I do. That is what that's the only thing that sticks with me. The real me, the Atman. And nothing else goes with me, this whole body stays here, doesn't go anywhere. My beautiful Ferrari stays in my, wherever it was, and that beautiful mansion or the island or whatever else I have, it stays right here, right? The only thing that goes with me is the karma that I have earned from this lifetime, and I have accumulated from past lifetimes too. And every lifetime I get certain opportunities to resolve my karma. I can nullify, I can earn more, and so on and so forth, right? So basically our afterlife is, that I say, this is not the only life, and there's many, many lifetimes we have, but every lifetime is an opportunity for us to realize ourselves, to basically kind of nullify your karma. It's like karma is like a bank balance. There's credits and debits. You earn good things, you earn credits, and then there are debits too, right? So I want to nullify all of that and make my bank balance zero. That's the ultimate goal. It may not happen this lifetime, maybe some other lifetime, but yeah, I think that's where I will hand over the mantle to Dr. Sheri, and then we can discuss, when we have questions.
Yeah, please do.
The easiest way to understand the Bahai perspective is to consider an analogy. And the analogy is of a child in a womb growing arms and legs for a world it cannot conceive. If you give the child a choice, perhaps they would not even develop those capacities because they don't know what they're for. However, we don't have choice in that situation, and when a child is born into this life, it becomes much more apparent what those capacities are for. In the same way, the idea is that we are, in this material plane, we are spiritual beings in a material plane. And our goal is to develop our spiritual qualities. And we do this in the material world. So we do this both to understand ourselves, our own diversity, our own strengths, but we do this in action, just as you were saying. We do this by serving humanity, by contributing to the betterment of the world, by learning about these qualities and our own diversity, and understanding that we're strengthening ourselves as individuals and that we're contributing that to the world. So in that way, we are exercising our spiritual muscles for a world we can't conceive of. Now, we know that children in the womb in the last trimester actually get interactions with this world. They can hear, begin to learn language, they hear music, they respond to it, all of these things, but they still don't know what it's for. They're just responding. Here, we also get glimpses of the spiritual world in many different ways. In our interaction with people, in our recognition of the kinds of qualities we need to create a peace with unity in our families, in our communities, in the world, including the way it is in the world now, which means we have a lot to learn. But nevertheless, we're in that process of doing that for ourselves, and then also we have control over ourselves, our own choices. We don't have control over anybody else's, in case anybody thinks we do. Anybody think we have control over anybody else? But we influence everyone. And so, in the process of doing that, we hopefully begin to get closer and closer to a spiritual realm. And the idea then is that when we pass away in this life, those are the spiritual arms and legs and capacities that we have in the next life. And just as a child can't conceive really of the reality here, it's so different. We actually can only barely understand the reality of a place that has no time, therefore no mass, spiritual environment, in a place where the goal is for us to learn to know and to love God and to grow closer to Him. Now, the Bahai faith does not consider that we come back. But what we do is the soul is intimate, is eternal, and that there are many different levels of knowledge when we get there, but when we get there, we become aware of what's real, of what's true, and that those things then begin to guide us toward the next stage of development. And we continue to grow through eternity. Everyone goes to the same place, but at these different levels, and they continue to grow till they reach the presence of God. And when we move into that plane of existence, we have much more power, greater than we could ever imagine, much more awareness than we could ever imagine, and opportunity, more than we could ever imagine. And so in that level, in that situation then, we want to think of this being part of one unit, that we're all connected. And we see that even here. We can see the possibility of being connected, but we can't even imagine how much greater it would be at that level. Just as a note, Baha'is believe that heaven is closeness to God and hell is distance from God. And that we are simply moving toward knowledge, and because it's a plane of education, and so God loves us, is merciful and forgiving, and desires that we know the truth and grow closer to Him. And that's the process that we have here. And actually all the religions give us knowledge about how we can grow closer to God, even though we don't understand the extent to this glorious next level of our development. So this is not just specifically for the Baha'is, it's everyone who has the opportunity here to choose. And the next plane is we grow through the mercy of God.
Beautiful, thank you. So in the Jewish tradition, we are anchored in the Hebrew Bible and through the lens of the rabbinic tradition. In the primary rabbinic text, there's discussion about really a question that probably comes to the mind of every person, at least at some point in their lives, which is if we come from the spiritual essence that we have, and that is what Judaism believes, that the human soul is from divine origin. It is pure. It remains pure even if we do things with our physical body that are not so terrific. And eventually it returns to its divine source. Very similarly to what you've already heard, it's difficult to define exactly what that is because we can't really perceive of it or conceive of it because we are mortal and we are finite. So the idea of saying, well, I'm going to describe to you what infinity looks like and what timelessness looks like, where, and what it is to exist in all places and all times simultaneously. Our brains just cannot wrap themselves around that. So a lot of what Judaism has to say about where we come from before we are born and where we return to after we are born is pretty vague, deliberately so, because we just don't know. We just don't have that information, mine is not one of those traditions that has a very clear notion of what afterlife is. And so there's not a whole lot of focus on it. We're not looking to achieve reward in afterlife. We're looking to live this life as best we possibly can. And the passage that I find very compelling in rabbinic sources is a very long discussion with that question that I alluded to earlier, which is, look, if we come here, our spiritual essence is put into this physical body, and this physical body gets hurt and gets sick, and it grows, but it grows old, and it gets ill, and we suffer and we die. Wouldn't it be better if we never were incarnated in this sort of meat puppet that we walk around in, and just stay in this ethereal spiritual realm? Long discussion, long debate among the rabbis, and the conclusion is, yeah, it would be better. It would be a lot better. However, for reasons that we don't understand entirely, we are here. We are born. And so it becomes our responsibility for whatever the length of time that we have to be in this physical shell, to do the best with it as we possibly can. And to take care of it and to protect it and to nurture it and to protect and take care of and nurture the physical shells of other souls as well. The other aspect that is going to sound familiar to you is a concept which is in Hebrew is midah keneged midah, which means measure for measure. That might sound familiar to Shakespeare fans. He stole it from us. The whole saying, actually, the entire concept, I'm going to just rattle this off in English, is the measure with which one measures is the measure with which others measures with you. Very, 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 very much analogous to the concept of karma. Yeah, what you put out is what reflects back. I spent a number of years with a Taoist teacher, and he referred to that as energy response. But that energy response is not classically Newtonian. Okay, it's not, if I smack somebody upside the head, someone's going to sneak up behind me and smack me upside the head. Action, reaction. It's not exactly like that. We live in a quantum universe. And so that response plays out in subtle and sometimes very, very diverse ways. Sometimes we can see the results of what we've said or done, and how it plays out, and how it returns to us. A lot of times we can't see it because it's not, or we can't see it all at once because it doesn't happen all at once. Okay, it's not that easy. So balancing out, as Virender mentioned as well, balancing out is not something that you can do all at once. Because we are rapidly approaching the Jewish high holidays of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, and Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, good opportunity to dispel, not directly related to the topic, but I'll bring it back, don't worry. Dispel a common misunderstanding, which is that that Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, absolves Jews of all sins. We believe that we fast for 25 hours, we go to the synagogue, we pray, and now we have a clean slate. No, absolutely not. What it does do is, if we are sincere, is that it helps us balance the ledger with the divine. So things that we may have done that don't hurt other people or don't impact on other people are just between us and God. Those are the ones that we can sort of get right just through those 25 hours. Assuming, of course, that we do true repentance and we are resolved not to do them again. So again, it's not just, we're not just wiping the slate clean. It's like, okay, I got another whole year, and then next year on Yom Kippur, I'll just wipe the slate. That doesn't happen like that. Anything that impacts another person, we have to make amends or restitution or seek forgiveness from that person. In addition, we are always held accountable for the consequences of our choices. The primary rabbinic text, the Mishnah, has a very difficult lesson in it. And it says a person is always accountable for always responsible for the consequences of their actions, whether deliberate or accidental, whether awake or asleep. So even if you're fast asleep and you rolled over and you knocked over the lamp and it broke, unintentional, you were totally asleep, but it's your arm, and if you weren't there, the lamp would still be in one piece. So no, we don't say you have to pay for that lamp or you're going to be punished, but there is this level of accountability and responsibility that human beings always have. Okay, and that's part of that idea of measure for measure. In terms of how that translates to what happens at the end of physical life, it's again, we're not trying to achieve reward or salvation. We are trying to give ourselves a spiritual arc, if you will, that will get us where we get our spiritual essence back home as quickly as possible. That spiritual essence always goes back home because it comes from the divine and it returns to the divine. So the individuality of a human being and their choices and their actions during their life doesn't determine whether or not they make it. All human souls return to their source. It's just going to take some of them longer to get there because the arc that they made for themselves was a very, very shallow one, and it's going to take a long time. And I will leave it at that. So, questions, conversation. Actually, I had a question for you. If I may.
Absolutely.
All right. Another friend of mine who is from the same community talked about levels of consciousness and that concept of karma and additional lifetimes. She said something which has stuck with me that I thought was very profound. Get your response to it, because I recognize that maybe not everybody agrees with everybody else within a community. But she said, the only difference between a stone and me is our level of consciousness.
Well, I think it's very debatable, right?
Okay.
So that is maybe one of the, I would say, not the only differentiating factor, right? But there's also the constitution, the makeup of the stone itself, right? The stone is a lot more metal and so fundamentally, again, to answer the question, I'll take a little segue into defining how our philosophers, rishis, they understood this whole universe is made up of, or every constituent of the universe, including me. I'm also a constituent of this universe. So I say everything here is made up of these 5 basic, we say mahabhuta, which is 5 constituents, right? Which is, the first is, say, the earth element, the water element, the fire element, the air element, and the final one is the ether. Ether is kind of invisible, we cannot feel it. It's like space, open space, right? So we know there's a lot of open space, right? Because all around us, all around the earth and the solar system, it's all just space. So these 5 constituents. Now in the case of the stone, there's a different proportion of these constituents. In my case, different proportion. We all know I'm 70% water, I'm some 20% earth, and do we all know we have fire in us?
Yeah.
We have this digestive fire, and we also say that the fire is what is responsible for the vision also. So there's basically those, all those, and the digestive enzymes that our tongue produces all the time, and all bunch of things. So within the body there's liquid fire in different ways, right? And then is there air? Of course, you're filling the lungs with air, which is, if I don't breathe for a few minutes, 10 minutes, I'm gone, right? There's no more me. So air is important. And the space, do we have space? What's the kind of between the bones? Is the bones completely solid? No, there's a lot of vacuum, right? That plus everywhere else, you'll see just space within the body itself, right? So everything is constituted of these 5 constituents. The stone has different proportions, completely different, because it will have a lot more of the metal and probably minuscule water, very less of the other things. And then yes, the consciousness, right? The consciousness is what keeps you aware. The stone is aware of nothing. I have a puppy at home which is aware of only certain things, right? Very basic animal instincts is what the puppy is aware of. Puppy is not aware of, maybe aware of some emotion also, like love and attachment and honest loyalty and all those kind of things, right? But then there are certain other things the puppy cannot kind of comprehend, how it originated or where it's going or where it needs to go. It just cares about, am I getting food now? Can I go outside, please? Can you do this for me? Those kind of things, right? So that's where the level of consciousness will differ in everything that is made up in this universe, which is all different living beings plus non-living beings, right? So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that answers the question.
Beautiful. No, that's great. Thank you. Thank you.
So, in many ways, what you said about your beliefs, respective beliefs in the afterlife are similar in some ways, right? The idea that all three of you believe that the soul comes from the divine and it returns to.
Yeah, I think that's very fundamental common,
Yes,
right?
yeah. So in your particular cases, how does your tradition, your faith tradition's belief affect the way that you live your life? For example, you had mentioned, these opportunities to return. So how does that affect the way you live your life? Does that mean you think, okay, I got another chance, so I can just act out? I mean, I don't think you say that, right? But you could.
Some people.
Yeah, I have another chance.
Right.
What difference? And so, and not knowing, actually, you left a lot of vagueness in kind of the Jewish tradition. So how does that affect the way you live your life? Maybe it's very different for you because you are a person who is in a leadership role in your faith. And then for Sheri too, I'm just wondering, how do your particular beliefs matter to you?
I'm just gonna summarize, repeat the question, just to make sure we have, just so we have it on on the video. So that the overarching question is how do those beliefs impact or influence the way that we live?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just specific ones.
Specific, yeah, our specific.
Not in general.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, will you take that?
You can go first, sure.
Yeah, okay. We'll start with that question. So in our case, we tell this to our children, anyone, all the time, that the most important thing for you is doing this, your karma, right? And how do you do your karma, or what karma you do? Now, as we live our lives every day, we are going to do something, right? We can't be sitting idle. So we do something. There's always karma happening. So we try to educate everyone that you want to understand what is the right karma. How should you align yourself with the correct karma, right? Because you could go about doing things that will be hurtful to others, or that may not be, in the best interest of, let's say, society at large. So you want to understand what is that right karma. So for that, we say there's other concept called Dharma. Dharma is basically a set of eternal values that guide us. And I need to understand that my Dharma can change at different points in time. The moment when I didn't have a spouse and I didn't have children, I would live my life in a certain way. I didn't care about it. I was probably a lot more careless, right? But the moment family comes into the picture, a lot of that equation has changed, because now I'm bound by the Dharma of being also a caretaker for my family, and then for my children, I'm also someone who's responsible for making sure they also are able to imbibe the right values, right? So I try to then tell that this is, when you live your life, you have to understand this Dharma, or your current condition at all points in time. You're a good citizen, so you're expected to behave in a certain way, right? There are certain actions you will do as part of being a good citizen. So as a person, as a common man, you need to understand all of this and then live your life. So you, by virtue of doing that, you will be doing karma that will take you forward in your spiritual progress, right? There's always opportunity, in the sense that is the opportunity for the end goal. The end goal is, I want to nullify all of my karma. I want to refine myself to the point that when I can now take my spiritual essence back to the same divine, because it's all part of that divine. It broke away from the divine for whatever reason. We'll discuss about that also. But it separated itself from that divine essence. We say the universal divine. But now to go back, that is where I get multiple opportunities, right? And to get there, I need to refine myself to that extent. That may not happen in this lifetime, but it will help if I start aligning my karma in the right direction. So as I start doing that, I'm making progress. You will realize that some people are far more at a different spiritual level. And we already have such names all around us, right? These people have gone way beyond, let's say the nitty-gritty of daily lives and nitty-gritty of the kind of things that we are chasing all the time, the material stuff and this and that. They've gone way beyond. There's numerous people like that in our faith, and there are people in every faith. So those people are already advancing to a much higher level than us. And everybody will be at a different level, but we are all making progress towards that. Does it help?
I want to give Sheri and I'll respond briefly too. So go ahead.
I guess I was thinking about the stone because consciousness is only one piece of a very large process of growing near to God. And in fact, we would have to develop consciousness for absolutely every type of response we have. So, love, justice, truth, humility, compassion, you could go on for all of these things. And we have the capacity actually to understand all of those things. A stone does not. A dog does not. We have these different things in our physical reality. But we have the capacity to go beyond all of those things. And we have imagination, we have all kinds of things in terms of related to our interactions with others. And so even at that level, we're called upon to use the capacities that God has given us. And we can see over time how humanity has gone from kind of being a child to being an adolescent. Maybe we're still an adolescent. But moving into adulthood. And just like you were saying, when you become an adult, suddenly you say, oh, this is what an adult has to do. I'm not ready for that, but here it is. I have to take care about other people. I have to be concerned. I have to develop new skills. I have to develop new understanding, all of these things. So in terms of being a Bahai, there is kind of a dual process. One is to develop our spiritual capacities, and there's a lot of information about that in the Bahai writing. But the other part is contributing to this process of childhood, adolescence, and adulthood for humanity. That, in fact, we are moving into a state that if we decide to stay adolescents forever, we're going to do real damage. Now, God is eternal and He could wait for us to grow up, but we would hope we would do it sooner rather than later. So it's not just developing those qualities, but it's also developing those qualities for purpose. To recognize that humanity is one race, to recognize that we're all one family, to recognize that we have the capacity to love each other and love diversity, to recognize we have the capacity to transform a world that's very self-centered and confused into one that is one of harmony and love and truth and justice and all of these things that we long for, but it seems very distant. But Baha'u'llah is saying it's not that distant. We have the capacity to do this, and it's also our responsibility to do it. And because we have the capacity, this is what we're asked to do. And all of that brings us closer to ourselves, closer to other people, and closer to God. And ultimately, what that allows us to do is get closer and closer to the spiritual realm, which is where we're going. We get more of those opportunities to be, to have these experiences that give us an awareness of spiritual reality. That it's not just a word or something that's ethereal, but it's really something we can feel right now. At a lower level than we would feel when we go on to the next life, but we have opportunities to feel connected in ways that other things in our universe don't. We have ways to feel that we know there's something greater than us. And we know that we have capacity to do more. So all of these things are there, and we get to uncover them. And in that way, we can move faster. We can we can be those people who are moving closer and closer to that reality, because then we're worried about everyone. We're like that, the cells in the body. I remember somebody saying one time that we may think this pinky is really unimportant, but if I slam it in a drawer, the whole body comes to its aid. So in that case, if we have that concept, then developing spirituality is not just one thing we do. It becomes essential to our well-being and the well-being of everyone around us.
Yeah, I had a question for you, Sheri. Is the Bahai faith monotheistic?
Yes.
Okay, and who do you say God is? I mean, what's your definition of God? I noticed you mentioned God several times.
God is an unknowable essence.
So God is
beyond our comprehension, and the way we know about God is from the messages that we receive from the prophets, from the messengers who come to us, from Abraham and Moses and Jesus and Zoroaster and Krishna and Buddha and Muhammad and the Bahai. That all of them brought messages that help us understand our relationship to God, not necessarily what God is, because it's beyond our comprehension. David just talked about how we don't understand infinity.
Actually, Abraham and Moses would say God is knowable, so they would differ with you on that.
Okay. Well, I think just to clarify, I think that the way we know God is through these messengers who help us understand God, and I think that's the only difference.
Thank you.
I'm Christian, I'm a Baptist, okay? So we are taught to have faith in God. We can't see him, but we have to believe that he does exist. What confuses me sometimes is all these people that are doing bad things, killing people, and all the rest of it, and then they give them the death penalty. How do they know they're not going to a better life? For us, they're being punished here on earth. But as you were saying, they're moving on to infinity and all that you were explaining. So here on earth, we're saying they're being punished, but when they die, how do we know where they went? Maybe they went to a better life after all of the negativity and the bad things they did here on earth. So I get confused sometimes. I'm like, why can't we see their punishment? But as far as we're concerned, they're going into a better life. They're going to see God. No one has come back and said, I saw God. But we are meant to have faith in God that we don't see.
We're Christian too, and when you say the death penalty, they could be going on to a better life. As Christians, you believe that unless believe in Christ, died for our sins, and was resurrected on the third day, rose, and then that's what we believe in. So, in my estimation, that person is going to be in hell for a long time after he gets the death penalty, if he gets it, which he should, if you're referring to the person that was shot a week ago.
Many things.
Many things, right.
Well,
I am another, along the same line, I've heard the argument or question, well, what about the people like Ted Bundy who committed horrific crimes when I was in college back in the 70s, and could have been my campus. Thank the dear Lord it wasn't. But anyway, he supposedly became born again in jail, and I have a problem with that he would go to heaven. However, I'm comforted by the fact that God is the judge.
Sovereign.
Is the sovereign judge, so I don't have to worry about that. I mean, yeah, that's my beliefs and my background.
So I'm gonna jump in from my tradition for a moment, and let my colleagues have the floor. In Judaism, the divine God is the source of all things, and that includes what we perceive as evil. There is no external source of evil in the universe. There is no rival to God. That's the we say there's none other than, right? Because, for no other reason, because God is infinite. And so if God is infinite and is in all places at all time, there's no space for a rival. There's no time for a rival either, I guess, either. It's a concept that's impossible for us to wrap our heads around in a kind of sensible way. But what that means is quite often what we perceive as evil in the universe is ultimately of divine source. Now, how can I say that? I can say that because one of the things that human beings are granted in my tradition is free will. We make our own choices. There is not an external force that is compelling us or even tempting us to do something wrong. We're capable of making our own choices. And that's the thing that I'm going to kind of echo back to your question too. That's the thing that makes us uniquely human, as far as we can tell, right? Is that we have this ability, this intellectual ability to make a choice and to evaluate and to know that's not a good choice, but I'm going to do it anyway. I know that that's morally, ethically wrong. I know that's dangerous. I know that's going to harm someone, but I'm choosing to do it anyway. All right. The example that I like to give is, as far as we can tell, not only are we the only species on the planet that stops and discusses and intellectualizes what we're going to eat, but we also argue about it. Right? I'm just not feeling Italian tonight. Can we have Thai? We had Thai last night. There's not another species on the planet that does that. So we have that capability of making choices and of considering what the impact of that choice is going to be. So much of what we consider to be evil in the world is really an extension of free will. Now, where does that place the concept of God, right? Rabbinic sources teach, and this is one of those things, you're going to listen to it, you're going to go, oh, I get it, and then you're going to go, wait a minute, maybe I don't get it. I'm not sure what it's saying. And it's phrased that way deliberately. So here it is. Everything is foreseen, but free will is granted.
Yes.
Right.
Well said.
And some choices have more serious consequences than others. So,
Depending on the choice and depending on the circumstance as well.
Right.
I can make the same choice in one set of circumstances that is not as dire as
Right.
if I make a choice in another set of
Exactly.
circumstances, right? So that whole idea of everything is foreseen but free will is granted
Right.
also raises the question: well, if God knows what you're going to do before you do it, is that really free will? And the answer is yes, it is. As my Muslim colleague Imam Muhammad Musri puts it, there's a difference between knowing and compelling.
Yeah, well said.
So if I know what you're going to be doing, that doesn't mean I made you do it. Okay? And that's how we apply that concept of afterlife in our day-to-day work.
Yeah.
Is that we're not looking beyond, we're looking at what's happening right now and what the impact of that is going to be. And the guidelines that we have in the traditional 613 commandments, right, of the Torah, those are the things that we use as our guideline for how we behave now, so that we can be aware of what the consequences of those choices are going to be.
I was going to say evil, real quick. Evil is a result of, we have free will, and evil is a result of bad choices of that free will. Because you can't compel somebody to love somebody. We all have to have freedom to love.
Mhm.
God has freedom God loves us, and we are to love others. But
Yep.
he doesn't force that on us.
Nope. Yes, sir.
I was really struck by the similarities in your concepts. Buddhism kind of is right in line with all that too, karma especially. Anyway, what frustrates me is there's no proof of an afterlife or before life for that matter, but there's a lot of anecdotal evidence. In my particular case, it was my brother's grandson. Started telling his parents when he was 4 years old that he had memories of a past life. They looked into it, at one point they thought maybe he was something wrong with him. They took him to a psychiatrist at the University of Virginia. Turns out this is much more common than I thought, and I'll be willing to share any of this afterwards too, if you want to get into more depth. I don't want to take up time for that. Anyway, it was this guy here, Jim Tucker, University of Virginia, and they took him there and they said, this is actually pretty common, especially in Asian countries. So my question is, do any of you have any experience with this? Children between 4 and 6, and then they kind of lose these memories when they're 6 and 7.
That's what our rishis say, that there is some of this kind of information or your memories do not get stored within the body or anything, right? It's like somewhat like a cloud. It's almost like at a cellular level, it's a very different plane. But when a being is born again, they retain some of that memory, and sometimes they retain a lot of that memory. But as they grow, as the kind of world, the current world wears onto them, that starts fading away. And it's for a good reason, and it should fade away. Because if it doesn't fade away, you're going to be connected with your past, and you're going to be thinking your parents are the parents from the past life, those kind of things. That happens with a lot of kids. And this happens, this is a very kind of well-known phenomenon, within India. We have observations where a child born into a completely different religion has all memories from his past life where he was in a different religion. So it even creates a conflict. The parents don't understand, because there are faiths that don't believe in regeneration and all that. And here in the US, there in the UK, if you go to YouTube, you'll see plenty of stories of reincarnation. There are kids who recount stories of the Pearl Harbor attack and all kinds of things. All kinds. But yes, I totally.
One eerie aspect of this, after a few years, he ended up telling his mother that he waited to be born so he could be born to her.
Yeah. It's perfectly possible. I believe that my daughter is actually my grandmother, because I have certain reasons to believe that. And we say that in our culture, we say that our ancestors will choose to come back. And there's a choice that's given to them. They may not always want to come back, but there's a choice that's given that they may want to stick around in their own family with their certain child. So they will come back as somebody else, like kind of recycled. But that's there. I mean, it's not scientifically possible to prove all this, because then again, our rishis will say that our understanding of science is very limited. What we know is a small minuscule of the reality. Our current understanding of science itself is very limited. There are many things which our science wouldn't agree to, right? People would say that the earth is not round, but then we discover over due course of time, people would say that the earth doesn't go around the sun the other way around, right? Because they say the sun rises and the sun sets, but the sun is not rising and the sun is not setting. The sun is just staying there. It's just the earth that's turning around itself. Because I'm turning around myself, that's why I perceive a sun rising and a sun setting. So all of this is, our understanding of science is very limited, and there may be a lot more, a lot more is left to wait kind of thing, because we don't know. A lot of things are unknown. The space is vast, and all we know is, it's a drop of the ocean.
Yeah, they say God is unknowable, so is the universe.
And to the gentleman there in the blue shirt, sorry, I don't know your name. Even Hinduism is actually a monotheist religion. A lot of people don't know that. It's a monotheistic religion. We are not. People would, they put this label of polytheist, multiple forms of the one divine. There's only one divine, and our philosophers would say, they said there's a phrase, ekam sat vipraha bahudha vadanti, which means there is only one truth. And when they say truth, they're talking about the ultimate divine. There's only one truth, but throughout the whole world, the different philosophers will call by different names, will understand by different names. So they're all multiple paths, they're all are pointing to the same. They're all wanting to go to the same.
But I think if you look at all these worldviews, they differ in the core, the basic beliefs. There's huge differences there. Where they come together is mainly in some of the peripheral views, and that's, I just say that out of due respect. I really mean that. And so I have a worldview like you do. So
yeah, and some sometimes it's very difficult for us to even comprehend the other view because we're only exposed to our understanding. So I cannot comprehend so many of other so I don't even comment. Because I don't know that well. I cannot even say anything on those philosophies, right? But yes, there are multiple ways to realize.
That's right. But I
Please.
think that's the fact that there is, if we can all agree there's one God, then we're all going in the same direction if we believe in God, right? Doesn't matter.
We have to
to
find the
that
same
extent,
source.
Right, to that extent, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I was thinking when you were talking about reincarnation, for every second, someone is born and someone dies. And maybe when one soul leaves this earth, another soul enters this earth. So, we don't know whether we've been here before or not.
It's difficult to understand that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We can say for sure.
Life is fascinating.
Yeah. And in reincarnation, our philosophers would say it's not just the human births. It's not limited to human births. So I have taken millions of births, many of them various forms. I could have been a dinosaur in a past life. For all you know, everything is possible.
It's every 7-year-old boy's dream.
Yes.
To really have been a dinosaur.
Yeah. It's possible.
There is. I will also say that Judaism doesn't have a really sort of a normative concept of reincarnation. In some of the esoteric texts, there are a few individuals in history over the millennia who still had unfinished business, and may have been brought back in a different body. But in general, it's not a normative concept. However, there is a normative rabbinic concept of resurrection of the dead, and Christianity draws from that, obviously. One of the places where Christianity diverged from Judaism was saying, we've got a guy who died and was resurrected from the dead, and of course, Judaism says, from our perspective, that's not how it works. It's not just a person. It's something that's happening in the unforeseen future. But even some of our greatest minds, our greatest theologians and philosophers, particularly Maimonides, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, 1,000 years ago, was troubled by this. And this was 1,000 years ago when there weren't nearly as many human beings on the planet. Because he said, how can you have resurrection of the dead? There's just not going to be enough room for everybody because we're not reincarnated into a new body. So he kind of struggled with that. He came up with a solution. But the way we understand that today in most streams of Judaism is that our individual personality is the parameters of our individual personalities are our physical bodies. We don't recognize each other by our spiritual essence. We recognize each other by our faces, by our bodies, by the way that we dress, by our voice, and that's how we identify fellow human beings. And if you take that and connect that to the concept of being made in the divine image, what that means in our tradition is a reflection of the infinite nature of the divine. There are as many different ways of a human being to look and speak and believe and think and dress and speak as you can't count it. It's infinite. So the infinite variety of humanity is what we mean when we say we're made in the divine image, in the image of the infinite. And so because we identify an individual by their physical self, the interesting thing is when that physical life ends and we remember the person, as time goes on, we remember less about their physical appearance and more about what they meant to us, which to me anyway says the real essence of a human being is their spiritual essence, because that's the thing that stays with us.
But I have a follow-up question for you. You mentioned about the infinite, the essence of human, being
Mhm.
human, right? That's what's reflected, or that reflects the infinite nature of the divine. But is the infinite nature of the divine just limited to the human?
Oh, no,
There is infinite life forms around you,
absolutely.
right? It may
Yes.
be on this earth, it may even be extraterrestrial, wherever, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
there's-
I mean, that's the psalmist writes, you know, that's, specifically they're talking about the land, the physical earth, but, conceptually, meaning that the entire universe, is filled with,
Yeah.
the manifestation of the
divine
divine.
essence. So in that sense, I would see divine also in every other living
Absolutely.
creature, non-living, everything, right? Omnipresent, omnipotent.
Now that if God created the entire universe, there's no reason to assume
Right.
that those same characteristics are not everywhere
Not
in the
everywhere.
universe.
Yeah, everywhere.
We're having trouble just being kind to each other right here. And there's a whole universe in which there are undoubtedly others who are striving to
I think in
find
some
a way
ways
as
we
well.
like to skip this part, right, and go to right to the extra, the ETs.
Right, yeah.
I can embrace that.
Much more exciting than my neighbors, right?
You know, something you said about, they'll remember you not for what your body, but for what you did, how they made you feel. People, I love the saying, people don't care as much about what you know as how much you care,
Or how
Nice.
you made them feel.
and how you made them feel. Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, and I think that it's really what we're talking about, this kind of characteristic that we are in fact spiritual beings, and therefore it's those qualities that are really our identity. So we can't imagine in another plane of existence what we will look like or be like. We really don't know. Because we carry the material concept with us everywhere we go. So we kind of talk about, again, you know, the sun
May not
is
even be
going
any
around
form,
us.
maybe formless,
Yeah.
for all you know, right?
Exactly. But I think in each case though, it's always about our learning to move away from the material toward the spiritual and making those kinds of choices, because that's who we really are. And making that transition to recognize that even is the key, because we can work for eternity, striving to be increasingly more connected to that spirituality, which is infinite. But you know, this is our battle here to recognize that our real reality is the spirituality that all the religions talk about, and you know, and so we can learn from each other.
Yeah, one more.
So if a person passes away, let's say a loved one, and you remember that spirit of that person, their laughter, their smile, their whatever they had that made them uniquely different than a million other people, that's the soul part of their existence, not the shell of the body, because you'll soon forget what they actually look like, but you'll remember the spiritual part of them, that smile, that certain words they used to say, or how they touched you, and touched your soul and your spirit. And I think that's what we remember. So that is infinity, that is infinite. You know, it never ends as long as you have the memories of the person. The body's gone, but the memories can live on for eternity.
And there is that quantum, that reality of being in a quantum universe, that, you know, we can, we remember, right? But, you know, in 3 generations, the rabbi's teach, within 3 generations, most of us are forgotten, in terms of, you know, because there's nobody who ever met us, right? But the quantum echoes of the choices that we made, those continue to resonate. In our children, in our grandchildren, and people that we encountered on the street, somebody that we did a nice thing for, you know, somebody got caught in the rain, we gave them an umbrella. Those kinds of things continue to resonate and continue to continue to build. And the good choices, bring other good choices, and the bad choices give us negative outcomes.
So that's the thing I think that keeps us going in terms of how the afterlife influences our lives today, right? Is remembering that kind of thing.
Legacy.
That, yeah, the legacy
Okay,
for
other
for
dear.
the planet, right? Not
Yeah.
just for my family.
You're raising your hand. I
Yeah,
don't want to lose you.
I was just thinking that even while we're here in the material world, you are attracted to certain people sometimes because of their aura. I call it aura. And it's like their spiritual essence that shows forth with them. Even if you don't know a person, you walk in a room or they come into a room and you can see something, good or spiritual about this person that attracts you. So that spiritual development and you see it in the material world here, that we're trying to develop a better connection that will help us in the next world. But while we're still here, it can be seen in a lot of times. I mean, I see it in people that, when I meet, that I see their goodness is shining through. So you can see it right here.
Yeah.
So,
I think what we'd all agree on is that there is a level of reality that is tantalizingly beyond our reach, and we are striving for that. And the very first session of One World, Many Beliefs last year that kicked off the entire program, I did the first presentation on the difference between belief and faith, at least according to Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel. And those are the terms that I use when I think about it, when I speak about it myself. And Heschel said that belief means you subscribe to a proposition. Okay. Faith means that you are reaching for something higher, something that's just out of reach, but that you continue to strive to elevate yourself and at the same time to elevate the world. And so I think we're all talking about, whether it's in your day-to-day life, whether it's in your perception of afterlife, we're talking about how do we elevate ourselves and how do we bring people, the world with us when we strive to do that.
That's what I meant when I said about faith, to have faith.
Yes.
That's where I was alluding to.
Yeah.
Having faith, actually seeing God per se, but you have the faith that we were taught to have. And like they say, God speaks to you, we don't listen. And it so happens that you have to decide, how are you gonna believe? Are you gonna believe that he does or not? Like, this is 3 different religions here. So now it's up to me to say, maybe I need to look further into, but to learn, basically, why I'm here.
I can add something to that. So we say that God, that divine is within you and is always speaking to you, because every time we're about to do a bad thing, there's something within us that tells you that's bad. But it's about whether we listen to it or not. And sometimes we condition ourselves so much that we just ignore completely, right? So we're not listening at all.
Right.
But it's always telling you, it's always trying to, that's the guide, it's always trying to tell that, I will not say he, she, but it's always telling. Not right, stop. But we maybe still go with something, right?
Yeah, we already know. For the most part, we already know what the choice should be. The question is, will we listen to the still small voice?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very feeble.
And then we're always learning. We're always learning because we have a level that we learn when we're children, a level that we uncover from our own experience. And then we have the choice as well to say, I need, whatever I know now, I need to expand. If I always walk up to the same type of person every time I walk into the room, maybe I should talk to someone who's very different than me and say, I'm going to find a wonderful quality in this person. And because that way we expand our own understanding of what it really means to love each other and to recognize that we're all spiritual beings. And we encourage everyone in that process as well as ourselves.
Did you have a question or a
Yeah,
thought?
well, I just recently had a conversation with a woman who became a centurion. So she turned 100. So of course I had a lot of questions for her. And one of them was faith. She was raised Methodist and very devout. And I asked her, what do you think about? What do you think about all that? And she said, death. And I said, what do you think's gonna happen? And she goes, I don't know. And it made me realize, she said, my whole life I was taught this particular thing. But here at the end of my life, all I know is it's in God's hands and God goes to her. And it made me realize that we all come into this world birthed innocent and pure. And then this life defiles us and traumatizes us. And we all just want to return to that innocence and that pureness, which I think feels like enlightenment. And I'm just curious
That's true. So,
what that is.
if you look at children who are very, very young, they will not even have any, they will not make, first of all, bad choices, and they will not, what you say, like they don't distinguish between, let's say, people because of this or that or
They
those
don't
kind of things.
judge.
They don't do any judging, right? Absolutely no judging. They are so pure. That's how everyone is born. But then we say there is, of course, your karma also acting on you, because everyone comes with their own individual baggage of karma from their past. So that is acting on you, and there's experiences, what you're learning from your world, your environment all the time, right? What you learn from your school friends, what you learn from your parents, what you learn from the television, which is an extremely bad tool, the social media. Not everyone is able to discern that this is good, this is not, People will absorb and get influenced by that, right? So I think that is all makes up the individual eventually. You just keep on learning. But it's possible that all of this is part of the plan, right? You have to go through the experience only to become better. To learn it, maybe falter over something, and then overcome, become a stronger person eventually, right? Maybe for us we say, it may not be like everything may not be resolved in this lifetime, but it will continue. So your journey will continue in the future.
Yeah, and I think also there's a difference between purity through ignorance and purity through knowledge. So it's a process of coming to those things with the awareness of these choices that we have to make. And we'd have to say, since God set this all up, there's a reason, but we probably don't know what that reason is until we work through this process and experience it ourselves, and we don't know. We have different religions that give us ideas about this, but at the same time, we do know that children, just as the kind of purity that they have in some ways, they're also very ignorant of other things. They just go and we kind of grab them before they run across the street or whatever it is they do to take the toy from the other child because they don't know. We get to a place where, we steal a toy from someone later on in life and we know. So this is part of that learning process, and it's just the beginning. We live maybe 80 years. Eternity is longer. So we don't know what that learning process is really going to be. This is just the beginning. So imagine the capacity that God has built in us to move closer to Him and to the kind of transformation that we can do.
You also mentioned enlightenment, right? So enlightenment, there are some terms you may have heard. Nirvana, has anyone heard of nirvana? Like smells like teen spirit.
Sure.
That nirvana is a word used in the Buddhist philosophy. It's also in their Hindu philosophy, or moksha. But what it literally means is that liberated state where I don't have any of this karma, which means now I'm free from these kind of attachments and emotions that are pulling me back. That will make me feel good or bad or happy or in this and happy, all those things. I'm free from all of that. And certain people, they say the rishis, the mystics, the yogis, they they can reach a stage where they can exit their body willingly. Most of us cannot do it. You know, we have to destroy the body, right, first to exit. I mean, when I say I have to exit, I'm talking about their soul, okay? So I exit the soul, right? The soul, if the soul has to exit this body, that cannot be done willingly very easily. But some people are able to raise themselves to that powerful, you know, kind of situation. Then they can then free themselves. They can reach that enlightenment. For all other people, I think it will take time to get to that stage. That's pretty much what it is.
Yeah, I think I was raised Southern Baptist, which got kicked out of the church and had so many bizarre questions and everything. As a child, and it was really interesting because this concept of returning to innocence, like the whole concept of evil, is just someone who has lost their innocence. They just literally lost that birth, that aliveness inside of them, right? So I let go of the concept of hell because it was shoved down my throat, right? My life changed after that because I started seeing the lightness and the innocence in people, because I realized if we have a divine God, why would we ever go to a place like that? Because he loves everyone. And I would say she. God feels more she to me. But always return, no matter what you do here in this life. And it really changed how I saw the world, and how I've approached people who have seen bad behavior or evil, and that tagged on them really doesn't draw them closer to religion, it draws them further away from religion.
Speaking of exiting, we're going to have to exit this room pretty soon because the library is going to be closing. But I want to thank Sheri and Virender for their time and their wonderful spiritual insights. Quick plug: our next quarterly session is going to be in January. I believe it's the 13th. I won't swear to that, but I'm pretty sure it's the 13th. This is brought to you by the Winter Park Library and by the Interfaith Council of Central Florida. The mission statement of the Interfaith Council of Central Florida is to embrace irreconcilable differences and cultivate shared values, revealing our best selves as individuals and as a community.
That's well said.
And I think y'all have done that. I'm also going to put in another very quick plug. We just started tonight the 6 days of the Global Peace Film Festival, and it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. This is 23rd year here in Central Florida, and I want to call your attention to 2 short films that are relevant to interfaith dialogue and understanding other faith traditions and worldviews. On Thursday evening, here at the Winter Park Library, actually, we'll be screening starting at 5:30. The first short film, it's about a half an hour. It's called Abraham's Bridge. And in Omaha, Nebraska, of all places, there is a circular wooden bridge along which there is a synagogue, a mosque, and a church. There's also an interfaith center, and in the middle there is an organic community garden. In Omaha, Nebraska, of all places, we have this model. And then right after that, there is a film called, also about a half-hour film, which is called Fiddler on the Moon. And it's about the challenges of being an observant Jew in space. Because a Jewish day begins at sunset, but if you're orbiting the Earth, it's a day about every 20-25 minutes. Neil deGrasse Tyson is in it. The directors of both of those films will be present to discuss them. If you go to peacefilmfest.org, you can buy your tickets. And if when you're checking out with your tickets, there's a little thing that says have a discount code. If you click on that and you enter ICCF for Interfaith Council of Central Florida, it's $1 off every ticket. So there you go. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
You all have been a wonderful
I
audience.
didn't get a chance to get
Very
But then again,